Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Maria, I am the owner of Baffling Beads AT, a shop where I sell handmade beaded jewelry over on Etsy, and also a second shop where I sell check glass beads and some brass supplies. If you're interested in any of my shops, please find the links down below. I always put the links in the description box. Today I want to show you how I make my Faunus fringe earrings. I already have a tutorial for the brick stitch and also for some fringe earrings on my channel, but because I've decided to provide a digital download over in my Etsy shop, so the jewelry shop, for 10 sets of these color combinations, I've decided to make another tutorial so that it's easy for the person who decides to support me this way and buy this download, that they have only one video that they can watch and they will be able to make these earrings in case they have no experience and they would like to maybe try to make them exactly the same way as I do. So yeah, I'm very happy with these. The upper part is mainly made of matte beads, and the lower part of the fringe, there you can see that the ombre part is made of 4 different shades. I mainly use Miyuki Delica beads for these earrings, and at the end of that fringe you can see fire polished check beads and brass leaves. So I do not sell Miyuki Delica beads in my bead shop, but I do sell the check beads and those brass leaves. So if you decide to get the download, you will need to see where it's best for you to buy those cylindric beads, but you can get the brass leaves and the check beads from my shop. Also, in case those check beads are sold out for the time being, and I'm not sure whether they will come back to my shop because some of them are limited, I also include a color description of those check beads. So in case any of those check beads that I use for my color variations are sold out in my shop, which may happen for beads that are limited in stock and maybe also in production on the side of the manufacturer, for all of those check beads I will also include a color description so that you can check your own bead shops where you buy all your glass beads whether they have check beads that match the color description. So yeah, when you're watching this video, the download should be available over in my shop. I will also link it either in a comment or in my description box. And I really hope that you will like this design. It is actually one of my favorites. Fringe earrings are quite easy to make, so they are very beginner friendly. Of course, there are always some things that you need to pay attention to, but I think overall fringe earrings are an awesome project for people who have not yet beaded, who would like to try it out, and who enjoy a pretty beaded earring. So let's switch over to my bead mat. I will show you all the supplies that you will need and then we will start the beading. So these are all the supplies that you will need for these fringe earrings. As always, I am using Memo thread for my fringe earrings because this thread is super fine, it's size O, and yeah, you can use the common 1G or Miyuki beading thread, which is also nylon, but of course the fringe will be a little stiffer. So I prefer the Memo thread. It comes in many different colors. So this is a light brown one, but I also have these in light blue or light pink. So I love these for fringe earrings. And I also don't condition it. So I use it just the way it is. Then we need 5 shades of Miyuki Delica 11.0. So this is going to be my main color. It's a metallic matte color. And then I have 4 different shades which are transparent or inner line with color. And these 4 will then make up the gradient. So as you can see, the upper part is mainly the main color. And then the ombre pattern is made of 4 different shades of Miyuki Delica beads. I always use wire guards for my fringe earrings because they can get quite heavy. I prefer using these instead of beading a loop where I then can put on my earring hook, so I will use these brass ones today. Then you need 1 shade of Miyuki round beads 15-0. In my case I use a golden color. Then I use some 3mm fire polished check beads. This is a mixed shade of transparent super light pink to darker pink. These are some of my absolute favorite brass supplies. These are tiny little brass leaves. So they're basically charms, and I love to place them either on extension chains of bracelets, but in this case I'm going to finish the fringe with these. And that is all, so let's start the beading. First I will cut a piece of thread. I will use about 3.5 arm length of thread for these earrings. This is quite long, so if you're inexperienced with beading and you've never used Memo thread before, especially if it's unconditioned, you may get some knots in there. So just so you know, if you have trouble with this thread, maybe condition it so that it's easier for you to get the knots out. I prefer using only 1 piece of thread. Of course, you can use a piece of thread for your main part, so the upper part, and then another piece of thread for your fringe. I usually choose to cut a long piece of thread so that I can first bead the upper part, and then I will use the tail thread as my working thread to add the fringe later on. And this is how I will do it today, but you can choose for yourself. It really just depends on what you prefer and what's easier for you. So in case you're also going to work with a long piece of thread, I will then measure about 3/4 of an arm length and place my fingers here so that I know how much thread I will use to bead the upper part of the earring. If you want to learn more about the brick stitch, which we will use now to bead the upper part, you can also check out the tutorial here on my channel. You can find it up there, but you don't really need to watch it. You can just follow along and do what I'm doing and you'll be just fine. But just so you know, there are more tutorials on my channel. So I will keep the fingers of my left hand right here where I measured the thread, and I pick up 2 Miyuki Delica beads. I will then push these beads down to where I placed my fingers, and I will start beading the base row of the upper part of my earring. So I will go from the bottom to the top through the very first bead. You pull your thread through, and you will place the other bead right next to the first bead. And then you will go back down through that second bead. Like this. Then you pick up another bead and you go from top to the bottom through that second bead so that you can add that third bead onto that row. And then you go up again through that third bead. You pick up another bead. Now you go from the bottom to the top through that third bead. and you add that fourth bead to your row. You go back down again, pick up a fifth bead, and you add that bead again. And you will continue this way until you have all the beads that you need in that row. So this is the very first bead row. It's 13 beads, and we will now continue with the second row. So again, you pick up 2 beads of your main color, and you will then take that second thread bridge and you will pull your thread through. Then you have these 2 beads that will sit at an angle, and you will go up and back through both beads, like this. Always hold on tight so that your beads don't get loose. And then you go back up through that second bead on that row. And just like we did before, we will now add single beads to the second row. You pick up a Delica bead, you push your needle through under the third thread bridge, you pull through, and you go up through the third bead. You pick up another bead, you take that fourth thread bridge, pull through, and you go up through that bead again. Pick up another bead, fifth thread bridge, you pull through, and you go up through that bead. And you will continue with this until we're at the end of this row. So I turn it over again, and we start the third row by picking up 2 beads again. We do another tied brick stitch. So again, we take the second thread bridge, you go back through both beads, you pull tight, and then you go up through that second bead. now you pick up single beads again. Take the third thread bridge, you pull through, and you go up again through that bead you just added. Pick up another bead, fourth thread bridge, pull through, and you go up through that fourth bead. And again, you continue like this. Three completed rows. If you follow along that pattern of my digital download, we will just continue on until you are at the last row of the upper part, so the row of 4 beads, and it's always the same thing that we are doing. First you always add 2 beads with a tight brick stitch, then you pick up single beads until you are at the end of the row, you switch it over and again, until you are done with the very last row. The upper part is now fully beaded, and I now want to add that wire guard. So because I'm coming out of that bead here on the outer side, I want my thread to come out of one of the middle beads so that I can place the wire guard in the center of that top row there. So and for this I go down through that bead on the left hand side, I continue on through that second last row, so I go down this row and then I will go back up again by going up through that bead on the left hand side and up through that second last bead of that last row. And then I can place my wire guard. So for this I'm going up on one side and down on the other side. And you go down through that bead that's right next to the one that you're coming out of. And check whether your thread is on that metal bridge of your wire guard. You can adjust it a little. And then you go down another row, back up again, because we want to pass through that wire guard another time. This, and then again Turn it over so that I have the thread on the other side of that earring for now. And again you go down through that wire guard and the bead in the last row. That's right below wire guard. And now we will weave in that thread so that we can cut it and it's secure and not in our way while we keep on beading that fringe. So for this I will just pull my thread through some of those beads in the upper part, make some loops so that it doesn't get loose. I'm currently on the back of that earring. You may want to pay attention to it because sometimes you can see thread in between those beads if you pass through some of them for a few times. So if you're on the back of the earring, you will then not see those thread bridges when someone is wearing that earring. Now I will cut the thread. And the first part is done. The tail thread will now become the working thread, because I'm right at the spot where I want to add that fringe, so that is super handy. So I've threaded my needle. I will start beading that fringe by picking up all the beads that I need on my very first bead strand. As I said before, if you are interested in the bead counts and the beads that I use for this design, you can check out the download in my Etsy shop. I finished that bead strand by picking up a 15 ohm Yuki bead, a 3mm bead, 15 ohm Yuki bead, and one of those brass leaves. Then I will push all the beads down and then I will skip the brass leaf and I go up through all those beads on that bead strand. Be careful to not skip any beads. And then you pull your thread. So to get any loops out, you will hold the very last bead, or in my case that charm at the end of that bead strand. You hold it and then you pull your thread up like this. Then I go from the front of the earring to the back of the earring through that widest very first row of that upper part, like this. I turn it over, and on the back of that earring I will then go back down through that bead right next to the one you're coming out of. Pull tight and then you want to loosen up that one strand that you have, like this, so that it's nice and straight and you have movement in there. Then you place it back on your bead mat, and then you pick up all the beads again that you need for your next strand. Then again I pick up a 15 ohm Yuki bead, a 3mm bead, 15 ohm Yuki bead, and one of those brass leaves. I push down all those beads along that strand. You go all the way up and you skip that last bead or that charm. You pull through. You hold on tight on that last bead or charm, and then you pull your thread up to get all those loops out. And you pick up that earring and you go from the front of that earring to the back of that earring. With that very first row of that upper part. Turn it over. And then you go back down through that next bead. Pull tight. And you loosen up those strands by gently tugging on them and by checking their flexibility, whether they move properly, like this. Then again you pick up all those beads. Ohm Yuki round, 3mm, 15 ohm Yuki round, and one of those brass leaves. I push down all those beads. And I go back up again. You pull through, hold on tight, and you pull that thread to the top. You pass through that bead from the front of that earring to the back of that earring. And you go back down with that bead next to it. And it's moving properly. And now I will continue until I'm done with all those singular bead strands that will make up the whole fringe of that earring. I'm all done with the fringe, as you can see, and I now need to weave in that thread and secure it properly. So for this, again, I'm going from the front to the back of my earring, and I will then turn it over like this. I will then pull my thread through some of the beads on that outer edge of that upper part. Now you need to loosen up that last strand a little bit. And now I begin weaving in that thread just the way I did before. You will make some loops and turns. I always try to pull in that thread in between those beads so that you see less thread bridges. And that's pretty much it. I will now cut the thread. And that's the finished earring. You can then add your earring hook. For this I use some flat nose pliers and some of these to straighten my earring hook if it's a little crooked. You bend that little loop to the side to open it, and then you place that wire guard in there. Bend it closed. Here they are. Both color combinations are included in the download, so this pink one and also the one I showed before. Both are included. As I said before, I always use Memo thread for my earrings, because if you use thicker thread, so G1 I think is the one from Toho, and Miyuki beading thread, those two are very common. The dangle won't be as you know, smooth and flexible. Just keep it in mind. So I always use Memo. Yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. They're actually this big. I currently have earrings in my earlobe, so they're about this size, so they are quite long. If you really like this design and you have some other color options in mind, you can always request a personalized pair of earrings from me. You can get in contact with me via the contact button in my Etsy shop. These make me so happy. Feel free to let me know what you think of this design, this tutorial, whether you will try to make them, whether you're interested in my download. You know, I'm always happy to receive feedback. And yeah, if you decide to make some for yourself, then please enjoy. And if you're interested in seeing more beading content like these tutorials, or maybe more on the small business side of things, please consider subscribing to my channel. If you like this video, maybe leave a like, leave a comment. It really helps. But for now, I'm off, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. Bye!